Hello everyone and welcome to this 9th video in our Leela Openings Repertoire series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at all things King's Indian and Grunfeld. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6. What does Leela want? Knight c3. Not like Komodo Dragon, which hides a little bit with 3 knight f3 and 4 e3. Leela wants the Grunfeld, just like every single engine I've seen, and actually, just like Stockfish, it tries out a lot of different systems. Tries out the bishop e3 system, the rook b1 system, but eventually settles for the good old traditional bishop c4 system. So that's c takes d5, knight takes d5, e4, knight c3, bc3, bishop g7, and then bishop c4, which is was the most popular system in my youth, and has had from time to time a bit of a revival. So Leela's main line actually is castles, and now not c takes d4 or bishop g4 that was so common in my day, or even queen c7, but a rather more modern line b6, rook c1, bishop b7, and bishop b5, Leela's move, e6, d takes c5, knight e5, takes, and this is quite a well-known position. Yeah, I mean, white's a pawn up, the b6 pawn will be hanging once the queens get exchanged, but hanging pawns, weak pawns, open files, powerful bishops, yeah, never really feels like it's really going to be possible for white to hold everything together, you know, especially if black's well prepared. Leela's line is f4, which is apparently a novelty, bishop c6, takes, rook c2, queen c7, knight d4, knight a5, e5, knight c4. I mean, actually, white hasn't done badly here. You know, okay, black's got a great square on c4 for the knight, but at least the pawn on e5 blocks out the bishop on g7. But rook a4, queen f3, queen a7, h4, takes, h5. It's a little bit of an initiative for white, but not particularly terrifying either. 0.13 according to Leela. Now maybe with a bit of extra preparation you might be able to find some things to trouble black, but yeah, basically like so many Grunfeld things, it looks perfectly tenable for black with some good extra preparation. Funnily enough, just worth having a look at Leela's other lines because they're slightly unusual in the engine context. I mean, rook b1, actually this has always been the case for Leela, or every time I've analysed with Leela, that rather than going for the sharp lines where you take on d4, you go queen a5, take the pawn on a2, Leela always goes for the good old-fashioned line, which I had once in my career, I think, and yeah, drew, and I've always found it, you know, actually quite difficult to find a real advantage. There was a wonderful novelty that I had, but that was played by my colleague, Grandmaster Peter Wells, and after that I've never really had much success. So f4, bishop c7, castles, takes, bishop a5. It's a bit of an odd line, you've got to say, the bishop moving away from this diagonal, but actually this pin on this pawn is quite annoying. Hard for the queen to get away from it without getting hit somewhere else, queen e3, rook e8, and if you can't play c4 then this bishop on c1 never gets active. So there's quite a lot of theory on this. This is Leela's line, takes, bishop a3, rook e8, bishop c5. Obviously if you can get that bishop round to the a1 h8 diagonal you'll be really happy. But, well, Leela tends to think, this is a novelty from Leela, tends to think that these lines are actually quite decent, and to be honest, I can quite believe that. Ends up in the end with a 0.13 advantage for white, but nothing amazing. So that's one of Leela's lines, rook b1. The other line that Leela wants is another line that I played, is bishop e3, c5, queen d2, castles, rook c1. I spent weeks and weeks analysing this variation. What Leela likes is something that wasn't really done at all in my day, but this has really become the modern treatment, just e5 straight away, and after d5, knight d7, and then we're just going to try and play f5. So f3, f5, knight h3, and then f takes e4 was played in the game Glidora against Lee, Chartres 2017. Yeah, knight f6, knight f2. It looks decent for white, really. Leela wants to play f4, which is quite shocking. Bishop g1, b6. Bishop b5, knight f6, knight f2, g5, g4. Knight e8, we take and go c4. In general, I would always assume that maybe white would be doing quite well because you've got these h4 breaks and also a4 to a5 as well. But obviously, White position fairly, well, looks a little bit weird really. It doesn't feel like you've got your ideal piece set up here. And h5, h3, rook f6, rook h6, actually quite active already. The king goes to f7, and we're going to bring something else on the h file as well. So, but still, I mean, I have the feeling that plenty could happen if we could get organised against the e5 pawn, a bishop to c3, a queen lining up. You know, who knows what might happen there. Also, if we could get something like a4 to a5 in. Still seems like quite a complicated position, but Leela just gives it 0.13 for white. What if black plays the King's Indian? What does Leela want to do there? Well, actually, Leela is pretty similar to Koivisto from this point of view, because after e4, d6, bishop e2, castles, Leela spends quite a long time on bishop e3, which was a system that I played a lot in my teenage years, scored some very good victories with it. But after a certain amount of time, Leela just wants to play knight f3 and go for the classical. Now we saw Stockfish coming up with an amazing idea, h6, which has also been tried in a number of top-level games. There was one at the Olympiad very recently with Pragananda as white. But Leela prefers the move knight a6, which, to be honest, I didn't play the King's Indian that often during my professional career, mostly during weekend events. But this was the move that I liked a lot. I had quite a lot of experience of it from the white side, and just thought it was very interesting positions. And this is Leela's main line. So bishop e3, e5, castles, queen e7, d5. We chase the bishop away, always very typical, just to try and prevent white from setting up the ideal structure after d5, which is to play knight d2. You know, because the bishop on e2 stops knight g4, knight h5, which makes it harder for black to really get a big f5 attack going. And with the knight on d2, you're pretty well placed to be starting your queenside attack. So playing knight g4 is a typical way just to disrupt that structure. g5, f5, rook e1, h6, and now this is known from a game. This is Quinones against Kappa, not hugely known players. White played knight d2 in that game. Leela wants bishop d3, queen d7 takes, and this is a nice advantage for white, really. You know, I mean, the bishop's behind the e5 pawn. You've got e4 potentially, so you just need to stop this knight getting too active. And you do have the seeds of good advantage, but you know, obviously in principle black shouldn't be too bad. But it's a 0.28 advantage for white, which is obviously a bit higher than we've seen. And remember that Leela's assessments are a little bit more depressed compared to Stockfish. So 0.28 would probably be about 0.6, 0.7 in Stockfish currency. So yeah, just like Koivisto, it's the classical that Leela prefers. None of this funny stuff with the Makoganov or anything, just simple development. Well, there we are. That was the Grunfeld and the King's Indian. Next up, we're going to round up a few other D4 things, like the Dutch, for example. See you there.